Are you dreaming of a life in Australia, picturing sunny beaches and a laid-back lifestyle? But the latest 2025 visa rules have you feeling totally lost? You're not alone. It feels like every time you check, the goalposts have moved, the costs have shot up, and the dream is slipping further away. In this video, I'm giving you the straight-up, all-in-one guide to what you really need to know before you even think about packing your bags. We're going to break down the critical visa changes that could make or break your application, the shocking cost of housing you won't see in the tourist brochures, and the one thing nobody tells you about Aussie culture that can leave so many newcomers feeling isolated. This isn't just another travel vlog, this is your survival guide. My name is Chris, and for the past 6 years I have called Australia home. I've been through the ringer with the immigration system. I've paid the eye-watering rent, I've fumbled my way through the cultural quirks, and I've felt that overwhelming sense of what have I done that hits you about 3 months in. I'm not an immigration agent, but I am someone who has lived this experience, navigated the bureaucracy, and come out the other side. I created this guide because the information out there is so fragmented and, frankly, out of date. The landscape in 2025 is vastly different from even a few years ago. I want to give you a clear, unvarnished look at the reality of moving down under right now. The good, the bad, and the brutally expensive. So grab a coffee or a flat white to get in the Aussie spirit. And let's get into the 5 critical things you absolutely must understand before you move. Let's start with the biggest hurdle, the one that keeps everyone up at night, the visa. The Australian government has rolled out some of the most significant changes to its migration system in years. And if you're working off old information, you're setting yourself up for failure. This is where the dream can die before it even begins. First, let's talk about the big picture. For the 2024-2025 program year, the government set the permanent migration level at 185,000 places. Now, here's the most important number within that. Approximately 132,200 of those spots, or about 71%, are for the skills stream. This tells you everything you need to know about Australia's priorities. The country isn't just looking for people, it's looking for specific skills to fill shortages. The message is clear. Employer-sponsored and highly skilled visas are more critical than ever. The days of easily getting a general skilled visa without a job offer are getting tougher. This brings us to the government's reformed approach to employer sponsorship, which evolves the old TSS Subclass 482 visa. It's not just a name change. It's a new framework designed to be more responsive to what the economy needs. This new Skills in Demand SIE visa framework, which still uses the Subclass 482 designation, is broken down into 3 main pathways, with your potential salary being a primary factor. The first is the Specialist Skills pathway. This is the express lane for high-earning individuals. To even be considered, your nominated role must have a very high salary. As of July 1st, 2025, that threshold increased to 141,210 Australian dollar. This pathway is for top talent. Think senior tech leads, engineering managers, and other highly specialized professionals. The trade-off for that high salary is a promise of faster processing, sometimes as quick as 7 days, because Australia wants these skills urgently. The second, and the one most people will likely fall into, is the Core Skills pathway. This is for jobs with salaries between the income floor and that specialist threshold. The key here is the new Core Skills Occupation List, CSOL. This list, managed by a government body called Jobs and Skills Australia, is a single, consolidated list of occupations the country has identified as being in shortage. Your occupation must be on the CSOL to be eligible. This list is meant to be dynamic, so you need to check it constantly. An occupation on the list today might not be there in 6 months. The income floor for this pathway, previously known as the TSMD, is now the Core Skills Income Threshold, CSIT, which increased to 76,515 Australian dollar as of July 1st, 2025. Your employer must offer you at least this amount. The third pathway is the Essential Skills pathway, which is still being developed for lower-paid workers in critical sectors like aged care and disability services. Details and commencement dates are still subject to further government announcements. And what about students? The changes here are just as dramatic. As of July 1st, 2025, The base application fee for a student, subclass 500 visa, increased to 2,000 Australian dollar. On top of this, the financial capacity requirements, the amount you must prove you have in the bank, were significantly increased to reflect the higher cost of living. You now need to show you have at least 29,710 Australian dollar for your own living costs for 12 months. And this figure is now formally linked to 75% of the national minimum wage. English language requirements have also been tightened. The government is sending a clear signal. If you want to study here, be a genuine student with the money to support yourself properly. So you've navigated the visa maze. Congratulations. Now comes the second shock to the system, the cost of living. Australia is an expensive country, and the gap between the postcard image and the financial reality is wider than ever in 2025. Let's talk about the single biggest expense that will dominate your budget: housing. The rental market is, to put it bluntly, brutal. A healthy rental vacancy rate is around 3%. In early 2025, the national rate was hovering around 1%, and even lower in cities like Perth and Brisbane. This creates intense competition for every property. It's no exaggeration to say that you'll likely attend rental inspections with 20, 30, or even 50 other people all applying for the same place. Now for the numbers, and please, sit down for this. In Sydney, to give you an idea, the median weekly rent for a unit was around 725 Australian dollar in early to mid-2025. Let's be very clear. Rent is quoted weekly here, not monthly. A common mistake newcomers make is multiplying the weekly rent by 4. The correct way to calculate your monthly rent is to multiply the weekly rent by 52 and then divide by 12. So that $725 a week apartment isn't 2,900 Australian dollar a month. It's closer to a 3,140 Australian dollar a month. For a one-bedroom near the CBD, you could easily be looking at $700 to $950 per week. In Melbourne, it's slightly more affordable, but still a shock for many. The median weekly rent for a unit was sitting around 550 Australian dollar to $575 in early 2025. That works out to roughly a 2,380 Australian dollar to 2,490 per month. To get a one-bedroom apartment in an inner-city suburb, you will be looking in this ballpark. While some forecasts suggest the rapid pace of rent growth might slow down, no one is predicting a significant drop in prices. So how do people afford it? For most new arrivals, the answer is house sharing. Websites like flatmates.com.au are your best friend. Be prepared to spend your first few months or even years living with other people to make ends meet. Beyond rent, other costs keep adding up. Utilities will also take a big bite out of your budget. Your quarterly power and gas bills can easily range from $300 to $800 or more, depending on your usage. Groceries have also been hit hard by inflation. A weekly shop for one person can easily be $100 to $150, and that's being frugal. A loaf of bread is $3.50 to $5. A liter of milk is around $2.50, and a dozen eggs can be $6 to $8. What does this all add up to? As an indicative budget for major cities, a single person needs around 5,100 Australian dollar per month, while a family of 4 would need approximately 8,800 Australian dollar per month. This varies wildly depending on your city and lifestyle, but it's a sobering reality check. You need to come here with substantial savings, not just for the visa, but to survive the first 6 months while you get set up. Australia has a low unemployment rate and genuine skills shortages in fields like healthcare, IT, engineering, construction, and education. That sounds fantastic on paper, but there's a huge catch, a paradox that trips up so many skilled new arrivals: the local experience hurdle. You'll see it on countless job ads: local experience required. It's the ultimate catch-22. How do you get local experience if no one will hire you without it? It's one of the most frustrating parts of the job search. Employers are often risk-averse. They're unfamiliar with your overseas companies and prefer the perceived safety of a candidate who has already worked in the Australian system. So you need a game plan. First, your resume needs to be Australianized. This means a simpler format, using local terms like superannuation instead of pension, and tailoring it meticulously for every single application. Second, you can't get around it. Networking is absolutely key. The old saying, "It's not what you know, but who you know," is incredibly true here. Use LinkedIn to connect with recruiters and people in your industry. Attend industry meetups. Many of the best jobs are never advertised publicly. They're filled through referrals. You have to get out there and talk to people. Third, and this can be a tough pill to swallow, be ready to take a step back in your career at first. You might have been a senior manager back home, but your first job in Australia could be a more junior role. Think of it as your foot in the door. It's how you get that all-important local experience and build your network. Once you have 6 to 12 months on your resume with an Aussie company, you'll find doors start to open much more easily. Finally, with the government's focus on employer-sponsored visas, your job search might actually need to start before you even move. It's daunting to secure a job from overseas, but it's increasingly the most viable pathway for many. The no-worries attitude doesn't apply to the job hunt. It takes persistence, humility, and a smart approach. It can be a long and demoralizing process, but it is possible to break through. This is the part that often gets overlooked in the rush of visa applications and house hunting, but it's just as important for your long-term happiness. Australian culture can seem familiar on the surface, especially if you're from the UK, Canada, or the US. We speak the same language, more or less, but underneath, there are subtle but powerful differences that can be disorienting. Let's start with the workplace. The famous Aussie work-life balance is, for the most part, real. People generally work their contracted hours and then go home. There isn't a strong culture of presenteeism, staying late just to impress the boss. It's expected that you have a life outside of work. How people communicate is another big difference. Aussies are known for being direct. There's less of the polite, indirect fluff you might be used to. This can sometimes feel blunt if you're not ready for it, but it's rarely meant that way. It's about efficiency. This goes hand in hand with a very egalitarian ethos. There's a general dislike for showing off or pulling rank. Your boss is often on a first-name basis with everyone and will muck in with the team. This brings us to the one thing nobody tells you: tall poppy syndrome. This is a huge, deeply ingrained cultural quirk where people who get too successful or boastful are seen as getting too big for their boots and are often criticized or cut down to size. It comes from a cultural value placed on humility. If you come from a culture where self-promotion is the norm, this can be incredibly confusing. You might find that talking excitedly about your achievements is met with a cool response or gentle mockery. Learning to be proud of your work without being seen as arrogant is a key skill. Then, of course, there's the slang. You'll quickly learn that arvo is afternoon, a kazi is a swimsuit, and a tradie is a tradesperson. But the language is also filled with a dry, self-deprecating wit. Banter and gentle teasing, taking the piss, are common signs of friendship. Finally, a few quick cultural notes. Coffee culture is a religion. Don't expect simple drip coffee. You'll need to learn the difference between a flat white, a long black, and a piccolo. And when you dine out, tipping is not expected. Minimum wages are relatively high, so service staff don't rely on tips. While you might see it in high-end city restaurants, it's by no means obligatory. This is probably the most personal and challenging part of the whole journey. You can have the perfect visa, a great job, and a nice apartment, but if you don't have a community, it can all feel very empty. Making friends as an adult is hard anywhere, but it's even harder when you're in a new country, thousands of miles from your support network. The first few months can be especially tough. The initial excitement wears off, and the reality of being a stranger in a new land sinks in. The time difference makes calling home tricky, and it's easy to feel isolated. You really have to be proactive about building a social circle. Your workplace is a natural starting point, but don't rely on it as your only source of friends. Aussies are incredibly friendly, but they often have long-established social circles from school and university that can be tough to break into. The key is to find your tribe through shared interests. Websites like Meetup are fantastic for this. Whether you're into hiking, board games, or beach volleyball, there is a group for you. Joining a local sports club is another classic way to meet people. And don't forget about other expats. While it's important to make local friends, connecting with people who are going through the same thing can be a lifesaver. There are countless Facebook groups for expats in every major Australian city. These are great for practical advice, but also for social events and just knowing you're not the only one feeling homesick. It takes time and effort. You will have to be the one to initiate plans and be comfortable showing up to things alone. It can feel awkward and draining sometimes, but every coffee you have, every group you join, is a seed you're planting for your future. Be patient with yourself. Building a real community doesn't happen overnight, but it's the final piece of the puzzle that makes Australia truly feel like home. So, there you have it. The unfiltered truth about what it takes to move to Australia in 2025. Look, it's a journey that is more complex, more expensive, and more challenging than ever. You'll face a bureaucratic visa system designed to be highly selective, a housing market that will test your financial resilience, a competitive job hunt that requires humility, and a culture with subtle tripwires that take time to understand. This is not a move to be taken lightly. It requires meticulous planning, a significant financial buffer, and a deep well of resilience. But is it worth it? For the right person who comes here with their eyes wide open, the answer is still a resounding yes. The lifestyle, the natural beauty, the opportunities, and the vibrant multicultural society are incredible. This isn't about crushing your dream. It's about arming you with the knowledge you need to turn that dream into a successful reality. It's about swapping fantasy for a well-researched plan. It's tough, but it's not impossible. I know this is a lot to take in, and you probably have a million questions. So I want to hear from you. What is your single biggest fear or question about moving to Australia? Drop it in the comments below. I read and reply to every single one, and your questions help me create more content that genuinely helps this community. And if you found this guide valuable, please give this video a like and hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and ensures you don't miss our next video, where we'll be doing a deep dive into a city-by-city breakdown of the best places to live in Australia. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.